The unsurpassed, penetrating and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in the 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. The other day somebody said something to me that made me realize forcibly just how essential compassion is in our life. It's vital. We can't breathe without it, really. We think our social structures depend on rules and procedures, and to some extent they do, but none of it would work without compassion. Societies that are based on fear and mistrust don't last for very long, really. They last for a while, but they just create endless misery, and people just can't stand that. So eventually they fail, actually. You have to have compassion as part of the very fabric of our lives. We have to do things with compassion. And we see the violence and divisions in our world at the moment, and we can feel angry and helpless. It all seems kind of endless and insoluble. What do you do about all these hopeless wars that nobody seems to be able to end? Well, Reverend Master Jiyu used to talk about the 5 laws of the universe. And I'll mention them all, but I'll focus on the last 2. The first law: the physical world is not answerable to my personal will. We can't control the weather, we can't control gravity when you're falling off a cliff, and all the other natural laws. And may it always be so. The second law: impermanence. We talk about this a lot because it's fundamental to the Buddha's teaching. Nothing lasts forever, everything changes. Everything comes and goes. Everything, us too. And we need to keep bearing it in mind, so we don't get too fixated on any one thing and not worry terribly about anything. Whether it's a thing we like or a thing we don't like, it will pass, it will change. If we don't like it, it'll change eventually. If you like it, it'll be gone eventually. Just not to grab onto anything. Well, it's true. Grab onto anything and think it's going to make me permanently happy, because it doesn't. And terrible things happen in our world, or we see people profiting at the expense of other people, or seeming to profit at the expense of other people. Don't break your heart over it. Things change, people learn, things get better. Sometimes it can take a long time. That's why this is called the world of patient endurance, because you need patient endurance to allow and to trust that change will and can and does happen. People do learn, we do better. The third law, the law of karma, is inevitable and inexorable. We will all eventually die, with only our good and bad karma to accompany us. This means that people who do evil deeds will have the consequences of those, and they need our compassion because they don't know any better. If they really knew what the consequence of doing harm would be, they couldn't do it, but they don't know. So we can have compassion for people who do terrible things, rather than just judge them and hate them and think they're dreadful. They will receive the consequences of their actions. We don't need to hate them. We can just have compassion as best we can. If ill will arises, just keep letting it go. The fourth law: without fail, evil is vanquished and good prevails. This too is inexorable. Reverend Master Jiyu put that last little bit in to make it quite clear, no matter what it looks like. Without fail, evil is vanquished and good does prevail. It doesn't mean evil people are vanquished. It's not the people. We don't really believe in evil people. It means the evil deeds cannot really prevail in the long run. You cannot keep doing harm and think that's always going to be sustainable. You can't. You can't do it. You can't do it to yourself. You can't really do it to other people. In the long run, it doesn't work. It can take a long time, but in the end, that which is good will prevail. People can change. Things change. So without fail, evil is vanquished and good prevails. And it's inexorable. There's nothing we can do about it. And this is because of the fifth law. The intuitive knowledge of Buddha nature occurs to all people. We all have that innate goodness within us. But it can get covered up with our selfishness and our fear. We all know selfishness and fear. We all have selfishness and fear. And we can see this innate goodness at work in all those stories we hear of people saving a complete stranger at a risk to themselves, you know. Just the other day, floods in Afghanistan, lots of people drowned. And one young guy, 18 years old, wants to save this girl who was drowning. She's 10 years old. And his family says, no, don't do that. You'll endanger yourself, you'll drown. But he says, my heart told me to do it. And he did. He saved the little girl. Her family was completely grateful. And it was a lovely story for any of us who read it. And we always love to hear those kinds of stories because it resonates within ourselves. Yes, I would like to be like that. I would like to rise to the occasion when something happens, just do the deed. And actually we do. People do save each other, help each other in dreadful or immediate circumstances. We all have that intuitive knowledge of Buddha nature, whether we know it or not, or, you know. And these stories give us hope, and so they should, because we all have that selflessness, heart of compassion within us, and we can choose to act on it. And it's just often that we don't always know that we're connected to everybody else. We think we're separate, and so we act from selfishness. But every now and then we come through, and maybe more often than we might think. Because I think it happens more often than we can imagine, that people do things just even in small ways, not dramatic, but in little ways, helping another person, saving another person, doing something good for other people. We all know. We all try to do that. We try to help other beings. And people who act from complete selfishness, they're suffering. So we can maybe feel compassion for them rather than hate them or judge them. Fear. There's a lot of fear at present. Somebody was talking to me about it. Actually, lots of people talk to me about fear. They're afraid. People are afraid. In our country and in our world, there's all sorts of stuff going on, you know. People are afraid of being shot when they go out shopping, for heaven's sake. Afraid that their kids won't come home from school because somebody will come in and shoot them. It's madness. You know, it's madness. We worry about the effects of climate change, and then people, you know, the doomsayers say, oh, you have no idea how bad it's going to be. It's going to be just catastrophic. Well, it could be. We don't know, actually. And we can worry about it or not. We can just do our best, you know, do our best in our own way. Political and social unrest. People are threatening each other for their views, both in this country and in many other places too. People just at each other's throats about politics or about their views. And it's all kind of crazy. Plus all the wars that are going on that seem just hopeless, you know. So it all goes on and on. Well, as we say, this is samsara after all, you know. It's always been like this, more or less. As Reverend Master Jiyu used to say, the level of sanity in the world goes up and it goes down. At the moment it seems to be at a fairly low ebb, but then it goes lower and you think, okay, is it going to drop out of the bottom? And then it comes back up. It comes back up. It doesn't last forever. But in the meantime, what do we do about it all? You can't just wait for the next, 50 years and say, oh, well, it'll go away when long after I'm dead. We can do better than that. We can practice faith. Today is Vesak Day. We had this lovely ceremony. It's the most important festival for Buddhists all over the world. Vesak is the most important festival, celebrating the life, the birth, life, teaching, and the death of the Buddha. It might seem odd to celebrate the death of the Buddha at this joyful time, but it shows us that he was a human being like us. He wasn't a god, he wasn't something separate from us. We can do what he did. He was an unusual human being, but we can train ourselves as he did. He was born, he lived, he did his best to help people, and then he died. And we can do our best too. Well, thinking of the Buddha, his whole life was an expression of faith, really. And as we know, he left his comfortable, rather wealthy home and his family, whom he must have dearly loved. He left them in order to search for something better, something different, an answer to why people suffer. having seen old age, sickness and death, oh, why is this happening? Why do we suffer from this? It must have been really hard to leave everything he knew and go out into the wilds to, having lived a soft life, to go out and just live on his own and try to find the truth. To let go of everything he knew and do that. He almost killed himself with asceticism. And after his enlightenment, things weren't so easy either. He had monks that were really difficult, other people who came were rude to him, trying to bring him down, people trying to destroy his reputation. His cousin Devadatta tries to take over his community and tries to kill him too. Why not? It's, it's just, endless stuff, and he just sat with it all. He didn't retaliate, he didn't get angry, he didn't take vengeance on anybody. And he had his own doubts about his own training, personified by Mara. Mara, the being who comes at, well, yes, you're not doing very well. You've given up your ascetic life. You've been eating. You're just giving up the pure life. You just, fallen by the wayside. You're not pure. Don't bother teaching other people. They won't understand when he finds the truth for himself. Oh, they won't understand it. Then just go back and enjoy it for yourself. Why don't you be a nice, real rolling king? You can have all the good stuff, do good. You don't have to be the Buddha. You don't have to live this, rather Spartan life. You could have all the goodies as well. Or, it goes on and on. And these must have been little things that arose in his own mind, He knew he wasn't infallible. He knew these things would come up, and he saw them. I see you, Mara. I see the temptations. I see it. So I don't have to go there. I have the choice. I don't want to be a real rolling king. What use is that? I've left all that stuff. But these things could arise for him because he was a human being, and we're human beings too. He kept to his resolve. He practiced faith all through his life with all these things that came his way. And he did it all out of compassion. Leaving home to find the truth and the way out of suffering, he did it not just for himself, but for everybody. How can we all find the way out of this seemingly impossible trap of old age, sickness and death? How do we understand that? How do we make sense of it? And all through his life he practiced kindness and compassion. Even when he was dying, he helped people. The person whose meal he'd last eaten, who died shortly after, he said, don't let him feel bad, because actually he's given me a blessing. It was my time to go, and it's merit in having given me that meal, so that people wouldn't make poor old Kondo, who had given him this meal, feel bad. He gave him a nice meal out of faith. And then, Buddha's dying. Well, you would feel bad if you'd given the meal, Buddha his last meal, and then he dies from it. But the Buddha wanted to make sure he didn't feel bad, Ananda, his disciple, who dearly loved him, and went away and cried. He says, where's Ananda? Oh, he's off crying. Bring him over here. And Ananda comes over. Ananda felt bad because he hadn't asked the Buddha to remain in the world. He should have done. Please stay longer. But he didn't. He missed the boat. And can you imagine that? Be even worse. He failed to ask the Buddha to remain in the world, so he dies. And the Buddha said, don't worry. You've been a wonderful, faithful attendant. He was his attendant for many years. You've been faithful. You've been great. Don't worry. Thank you for everything you've done for me. And at the last, just before he dies, he brings one more monk into the Sangha, one more person who wants to be a monk. And they try to say, no, he's dying. And he said, no, let him come in. His last disciple, Subhadra. So, he lived a life of great, deep compassion. Thinking about fear, he didn't talk about fear a whole lot. But what he did say was, before his enlightenment, he said, when fear and dread arose in me, if I was walking, I would continue walking until that fear and dread subsided. If I was sitting, I would continue sitting until that fear and dread subsided. When I was lying down, standing, and so forth. Whatever he was doing, he would keep doing it until fear and dread passed away, knowing that they would. Fear and dread does subside. You can't be in fear and dread for all the time. It's just not sustainable. You have to be able to take a breath now and then. Because you can keep bringing it back and nourishing it, but you don't have to dwell in it all the time. You can sit still with it. And that's what we can do when we're afraid. To be still and to trust that it will subside, because it has a kind of empty nature when you look at it, You may have things to be afraid of, but we don't have to live in fear. We can't fix the world, but we don't have to be afraid all the time. When fear arises, look right at it. What am I afraid of? Is it realistic? Or is it just a kind of, dream? Well, maybe it's realistic, maybe it's not. But we still have to deal with it. We still have the fear arise. We still have to do something. It's to sit still with it and not to judge it. Not to think we're daft because we're afraid of spiders or whatever. Just to sit with it, When we have a lot of anger and resentment towards other people and judgment arising because we don't like what they're doing, we don't have to judge our judgment. Say, I shouldn't be judging. Just sit still and don't completely believe it. There's that judgment arising, I don't know what it's like to be that person. I don't know why they're the way they are. I could be that person. I might be worse if I was in that situation. I don't know. And even if the anger and the judgment keep coming up over and over and over again because of things, we don't like about people, we can keep working on letting it go over and over and over again. We don't have to think, I can't do anything about this. I'm just going to be always hating this person. No, we have a choice. We can always come back to trying to practice kindness, compassion. And it does help, working on letting it go. And to remember that selfishness, which is what causes the problems, it's based in fear and the feeling that we're separate from everybody else and we have to protect ourselves. Some people amass a huge amount of wealth to protect themselves, and it seems they keep getting more and more at the expense of other people because they're afraid. People who try to gain power over others or manipulate them, they're afraid. And the more power you gain, the more you have reason to be afraid because nobody likes you. And the people do try to assassinate you and so forth. A society based on fear and distrust like that, it can't really sustain itself because people won't, in the end, they won't stand for it. And you do get bumped off or put in prison or whatever, generally. That's not a good way to go. Compassion, the Buddha's compassion. The Metta Sutra, we just sang this morning, the reason it came about was, in the Buddha's time, there was a group of monks living out in the forest. And they didn't know, but they had moved into a place where some devas were, and the tree spirits. Whether you believe in tree spirits or not, I am perfectly prepared to believe that they're there, whether we see them or not. We don't have to see everything. Well, the tree spirits didn't like them. They felt intruded upon, and they made things unpleasant. They created horrible noises and dreadful smells and frightened the poor monks. So the monks went back to the Buddha and said, "Help! What do we do with this?" And he taught them the Metta Sutra. Recite this for the benefit of the devas. So they went back, they chanted this Metta Sutra, and the devas were delighted and welcomed them. And they were no longer afraid of the devas, and the devas are probably no longer afraid of the monks. So, the Metta Sutra has some wonderful help for us. And we sang it this morning, but you don't always remember what you're singing because you're also trying to offer incense or offer, pour water and so forth, so you don't, So I'm going to read some of it. Wishing that all beings be at ease, in gladness and in safety, whatever living being there may be, whether they're weak or strong, omitting none, everybody, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living nearby and those far away, those who are born and those yet to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state, any being, despise anybody. No, don't despise anybody. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm on another. This is exactly what we've been talking about. Even as a mother protects with her life her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living things, with a boundless heart of kindness, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upward to the sky and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, high, low, in all places, radiating kindness to all beings, all things, in all worlds, actually. So we're freed from hatred and ill will by doing this. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, freed from all drowsiness, being awake when we do this, one to sustain this recollection, remember, offer this merit, this loving kindness to beings. This is said to be the sublime abiding. And by not holding to fixed views, our opinions about how things should be, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, is not born again into this world. So it's exactly what we need to do. And I got this talk ready, then I looked at the Metta Sutra, I thought, this is exactly it. Why didn't I just read the Metta Sutra and forget about the talk? Anyway, here we are. So, if we're afraid, we can offer loving kindness to those we're afraid of. Well, it doesn't mean we have to feel great love for them all. It's hard to generate love, but we can let go of our ill will. It's said that if loving kindness can mean just not cherishing ill will, not nourishing hatred and anger towards somebody. Letting go of our ill will and our judgments of other people, and allow our heart of compassion to arise. Then we start to let go of our fear, because we're not seeing ourselves as separate from them, radiating loving kindness throughout the whole world. How could we not feel completely part of that? And it helps us with our fear. If we're afraid, if we're angry about what's going on in the world, feeling despondent or hopeless, to offer compassion and kindness is the only way we can live together actually in this world. It's the only thing that works, offering kindness and compassion, no matter what. We're social beings, we need each other. We can't live at each other's throats. So when we're afraid, if we can sit still and offer merit and compassion to other beings, especially those we're afraid of or those we don't like, they may need our help more than anybody, It helps us to overcome our fear and our anger and dislike and all, and not let it rule our lives. We don't have to live afraid all the time or angry all the time. We can let go of that. Just practice kindness and see that other beings are not different from me. Letting go of that feeling of separation, me versus everybody else. But actually we're all just part of one being. We're all connected. I'm always saying this. I'm saying it again. We're not that different from everybody else. As the Buddha says, hatred never ceases by hatred. By love alone does hatred cease. If we act on fear, we create more fear. If we act on compassion, we foster compassion. Just how that is. We don't have to feel great love for everybody, as I said, but we cannot nourish ill will. We can try to let go of ill will and judgment. We can practice compassion and kindness. That practice is not something you just have compassion. We have faith. We practice it. We practice compassion. We nourish it. We practice faith. We nourish that. And that really helps us in this difficult world. How we can help ourselves, help each other, and help our world. It can only help.